Hi, you're watching Reddit Revelations.
I thought she was just tired. We'd both had a long week, her with her back-to-back meetings and me juggling a work schedule that seemed to stretch endlessly in both directions. So when she came home unusually quiet, I didn't press. I offered her a glass of wine, the one she usually liked after a rough day. She declined, without looking at me. I asked if she wanted to sit outside, maybe get some air, listen to the wind chimes. She mumbled something I didn't catch. It wasn't like her to ignore a chance to decompress. She disappeared into the bedroom. A few minutes later, I heard the closet doors open, then the sound of her jewelry drawer. Then nothing. I stood there at the kitchen counter, trying to figure out what I had missed, some unspoken cue, some moment I didn't pick up on earlier in the day. When she came back out, she wasn't holding a bag or a suitcase. Just her hand. Empty. Her wedding ring was gone. I stared at her hand before I even looked up at her face. My stomach did a quiet flip, the kind that doesn't scream panic but hums with a slow burn of dread. "I need time to think," she said, calm as if she were asking for the salt. Her voice didn't shake. She said it like she was announcing a grocery run or reminding me to pay the electric bill. And that's when I knew this wasn't a break to gain clarity. It was her escape route. She just hadn't walked out the door yet. She placed the ring on the table between us. Not gently, just enough to make a soft, deliberate sound against the wood. That's when something snapped, not loud or violent, but quiet and final. I didn't see her face, just the empty space where the ring had always been. I didn't say a word. I reached into my wallet, pulled out the old photo I had kept there, us from our honeymoon, soaked in sunlight and newness. I folded it twice without looking at it and dropped it into the trash. She blinked. That was the only emotion she showed. Not regret. Not fear. Just surprise. I walked to the coat closet, pulled out the small lockbox where we kept backup keys and old receipts. My hand found the envelope I'd sealed months ago, one with an apartment listing I'd bookmarked, half joking, half daydreaming about a place of my own. I never thought I'd actually need it. When I turned around, she was still standing there. She hadn't moved. She wasn't even pretending to stop me. That part told me everything. So I said it, not with malice, just resolution. "You can have all the time you want to think. I'm done being someone you put on pause." I didn't shout. I picked up my coat, slid the envelope into my inside pocket, and left our house without looking back. The air outside felt different. Colder than I expected for spring, but also cleaner, like it wasn't filled with recycled excuses anymore. I didn't drive far, just far enough to think clearly. I sat in the car with the engine off, letting the quiet hum of a nearby street lamp fill the space around me. That hum was steadier than anything I'd felt in our marriage for a long time. Because here's the truth. Her request wasn't about clarity. She wanted space to decide whether the next chapter would still include me, or if I'd just be an inconvenient loose end to cut. She didn't say, "I love you, but I'm confused." She didn't even say she needed to fix anything. Just, "I need time," like our life was a movie she could pause with a remote and resume when the plot got interesting again. And just like that, my commitment evaporated. I had spent years thinking love was about holding on. I now saw it for what it really was. Sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is let go first. Still, I didn't rush to conclusions. I needed to know what drove her to that moment, because I had a gut feeling this wasn't spontaneous. Something or someone was fueling this decision, and I wasn't about to walk into another emotional ambush. That night, I slept in the backseat of my car, parked near the lake we used to visit when we were dating, the spot where she once told me she wanted forever with me. The irony made me laugh. In the morning, I opened our shared calendar on my phone. She had a lunch scheduled later that week with someone from work, her mentor, a name she'd brought up more than once. Too many times. She needed time to think. Well, so did I. The lake was quiet the next morning, just a soft ripple of water and the distant sound of birds that didn't seem to care I hadn't slept. I stared through the windshield, my eyes gritty from a night without rest, but my thoughts were sharper than they'd been in weeks. Maybe months. She wanted space to think, she said. But something in how she delivered those words had been off. Too clean. I started thinking in reverse. Walking backward through our last year. And then the year before that. Tracing patterns I hadn't dared look at too closely while I was still trying to believe everything was fine. It wasn't. There had been a shift. Not one big event, not some dramatic fallout, but small, repeated erosions. Tiny clues buried in ordinary days. Like how she'd stopped waiting for me to get home from work before eating dinner. Or how she laughed harder at jokes from her phone than anything I ever said. I remembered the lunch date she'd canceled last minute, The conversations that ended before they began, the way her face used to light up when I entered her room, and how it had dulled slowly over time, like a dying bulb flickering to its end. And then, of course, there was Colin. She'd mentioned him a handful of times, never directly, but always under the umbrella of mentorship. He was just a career guide, someone she'd been paired with through her company's leadership program. I hadn't thought much of it. Why would I? She was ambitious, driven, always chasing the next milestone. I was proud of that. But now, the pieces were shifting, sliding into place in ways I couldn't unsee. Colin. The same Colin whose name had appeared on our calendar again and again. The one who'd sent her a book on emotional leadership last Christmas, signed with a handwritten note that said, "You deserve more than they see in you." I remember asking who they was. She said it referred to her boss. I believed her. But now, with the ring gone and her eyes colder than I'd ever seen them, I wasn't so sure. Later that day, I went back home. To move quietly. I parked around the corner, walked the last block like I didn't live there. Like it was someone else's house. Our house had always had the same smell, faint vanilla from our candles. But walking in that day, it felt foreign. Like a showroom model of a life I used to occupy. She wasn't there. Her purse was gone. Her keys too. But what caught my attention was the photo frame on the entry table. The one that always held our wedding picture. It had been turned face down. Not removed. That was worse. It meant she wasn't ready to let go fully. But she couldn't look at it either. Upstairs, the closet was still full. Drawers untouched. But one suitcase was missing. Just gone. This was no trial separation. This was her easing me out of the story before the ink was dry. I checked the shared email we had, one we used for bills and schedules. There was nothing directly incriminating, but I found a recent booking confirmation. A reservation at a quiet in about 2 hours out of town. For a weekend. For two. It wasn't proof, not in a legal sense. But emotionally? It was a map with a single destination. She hadn't taken off her ring to think. She'd taken it off to begin. So I left again. Because being there meant playing along with the illusion. I didn't want to tip her off. What exactly had been taken from me, and who had helped take it? That's when I reached out to someone I hadn't spoken to in a long time, Sarah. She used to be her closest friend. They'd grown apart after a disagreement about something professional. Sarah never liked Colin. Called him the charm that hides the knife. Back then, I thought she was being dramatic. Maybe even jealous. Now I wanted to know what she had seen that I hadn't. I sent her a message. "Hey, I know it's been a while. Just wondering if we could talk. I could use your perspective on something." She replied within the hour. "Sure. You free tonight?" We met at a quiet cafe neither of us had ever visited before. Neutral ground. She looked thinner, a little tired, like the years had taken something from her too. But when I told her what had happened, she didn't act shocked. She just exhaled. Like she'd been waiting to be asked. "I figured something like this was coming," she said. "Colin's not who he pretends to be. He's not just a mentor. He's a manipulator. Smooth. Knows exactly when to step in and make himself indispensable. He starts by making them feel like no one else gets them," she continued. "Then he becomes the one voice they trust. After that, it's just a matter of time." "So you think there's something going on between them?" Sarah didn't hesitate. "I don't think. I know." She reached into her bag, pulled out her phone, and opened an album labeled Work Retreat 2024. She handed it to me. Photo after photo. My wife and Colin. Not indecent, but close. Too close. The kind of body language that tells more than words ever could. In one, he's holding her wrist while she laughs. In another, she's leaning into him, eyes locked, like no one else in the room exists. Sarah looked at me carefully. "I didn't show you this to hurt you, but you needed to know." And I did. For the first time since she took off that ring, I didn't feel abandoned. I felt relieved. Because now, I wasn't guessing. I had confirmation. She had already left. Now, it was my turn to start walking. I didn't go back to the house that night. There was nothing there for me anymore, not warmth, not comfort. Just space. Cold, silent space that used to carry memories but now only echoed the things she never said out loud. I sat in the car again, parked just off a quiet road that overlooked the city skyline. Funny how distance could make everything look so small. For days, I said nothing to her. No texts, no calls, no inquiries. I wanted her to feel what absence really meant. Not the theatrical kind she thought she was enacting with her time to think, but the quiet, suffocating kind that comes when the person you're used to leaning on simply steps away. I started peeling back the layers of our life together, like an investigator looking for the blueprint of his own failure. I looked through the last 6 months of our calendar. Nearly every week, she had something planned that didn't include me. Late meetings, weekend networking events, out-of-town retreats, all dressed up in professionalism and plausible excuses. But I saw it now, she hadn't been living a double life. She had been slowly exiting this one. The financials told another story. Separate purchases made with a credit card. Items I never saw. Spa visits. Boutique shopping. Restaurants I'd never heard of. There was even a charge at a place called the Evergreen Loft, a modern getaway for transformational couple weekends, according to their website. I looked it up. Cozy cabins. Private fire pits. Wine tastings and massage packages. All the things we used to enjoy years ago. I wasn't looking to burn the life we had built together, but I was done carrying the emotional weight of a relationship she had already unloaded. If she wanted distance, she would get more than she bargained for. I called my lawyer. "Don't draft anything yet," I said. "Just be ready. Something's changing." He didn't ask for details. My voice told him everything. I went through our shared files and pulled what mattered: insurance documents, joint account statements, the lease agreement, her signed consent to let me manage the household finances. Quietly, I was putting the chessboard in order. Meanwhile, she hadn't reached out. Not even a courtesy check-in. That silence, once deafening, had become my greatest ally. It told me where we stood. She just hadn't noticed the moment I stopped waiting. Then, midweek, she texted. No greeting. Just 5 words. "Can we talk this weekend?" I stared at the screen for a long time before responding. "I'm busy. Maybe next week." She replied with a thumbs up. That was it. No urgency. Which confirmed what I'd suspected: she hadn't texted because she missed me. She was feeling out the temperature, seeing if I'd softened. She didn't expect the indifference. That was new. That unnerved her. The following night, I received a message from someone I hadn't spoken to in months, Claire. One of her oldest friends. Not close enough to know everything, but not distant enough to be oblivious. Her message was careful. "I heard from Sarah. I know a little about what's going on. Just wanted to say I'm sorry." A few minutes later, another message came through. "Can I be honest?" I replied with one word. "Sure." Then came the text that told me everything I needed to know. She's been talking about Colin for a long time, not just as a mentor. She said things like, "He sees me," or "He makes me feel alive." I didn't want to believe what I was hearing, but I thought you should know. Then Claire added something I didn't expect. "Just so you know," she said, "Colin's not really interested in a relationship." She had risked everything: our marriage, our history, our home, not for love, not even for lust, but for a fantasy. That explained the ring. That explained why she hadn't tried to fix anything. She wasn't coming to me from a place of regret. She was nursing a wound of her own, a betrayal that didn't involve me. A man she thought would rescue her had already stepped away. And now she was turning around, maybe hoping I'd be the soft landing she always took for granted. That wasn't going to happen. The next day, I returned to the house. Not to talk. To act. I emptied out the hall closet of my things. My jackets, my old boots, the scarf she bought me when we first traveled to Denver, gone. I cleared my desk. Every trace of my digital self was removed. She wouldn't even notice right away. But when she did, it would feel like a ghost had passed through. I left a note. Just precise. "You said you needed time to think. I've taken that time to live. I hope you find what you're looking for. But don't expect me to be waiting when you do." She returned home that evening. I wasn't there. Neither was the man she used to know. I had clarity. That was more than enough. And still, something told me this wasn't over. Because she would realize too late that her safety net had vanished. She had burned a bridge she thought I'd rebuild for her. Instead, I watched it collapse from a safe distance. 3 days passed before I heard from her again. Long enough for silence to feel unfamiliar. Her message came in the afternoon, casual on the surface, but too carefully worded to be innocent. "Hey, I came home and saw your note. I think we should talk. Maybe meet for coffee." I read it twice. Not, "I'm sorry." Just a polite suggestion. As if she were reconnecting with a friend she hadn't seen since college. I could see the calculation between the lines. She was testing for softness. Looking for signs that I might still be standing where she left me. But I wasn't. I'd already moved. I didn't respond right away. I waited until the next morning, then replied with a single sentence. "I'm not sure there's anything left to talk about." I knew that line would hit her in ways she hadn't prepared for. It would knock the script from her hands. Because in her version of events, I was still waiting to be rescued by her second thoughts. She hadn't yet considered the possibility that I'd already written my own ending. 2 hours later, she called. I let it ring. Then she texted again. I didn't think it would go like this. Can we please talk? The shift was subtle, but it was there. A crack in the armor. I replied, finally. You said you needed space. I respected that. Now I've filled it. That was all. I didn't ask what she wanted. I didn't invite dialogue. And she knew it. But later that evening, I received another unexpected message, this time from Sarah again. I thought you should know, she and Colin had a fight. A big one. Word got around the office. I stared at that message longer than I needed to, because I could see the picture clearly now. Her timing, her sudden re-engagement. It was panic. Her plan had unraveled, and now she was circling back, not out of love, but necessity. Sarah sent another text. He called things off. She was devastated. Cried in the break room, apparently. She's been off since. Her moment of clarity had nothing to do with me. It had everything to do with losing her backup plan. But the most unexpected twist came 2 days later, when I walked into a quiet bar downtown to meet a former colleague for lunch. The place was half empty, dimly lit, the kind of spot you only find if someone tells you about it. As I stepped inside, I saw a familiar face at the far end of the bar. Colin. He was alone, staring into a half-finished drink. And the moment our eyes met, I knew he recognized me. He froze for a moment, then gave a small nod, as if to acknowledge some unspoken truth between us. I didn't walk toward him, but as fate would have it, he stood up, walked over, and stopped a few feet from me. Didn't expect to see you here, he said. I didn't respond. Just watched him. He took a breath. Look, I'm not going to defend anything. I think you probably already know more than I'm comfortable with. I said nothing. I never meant for any of this to get complicated, he added. That made me laugh, just a short, dry sound. No one ever does, I finally said. He nodded slowly, his face tight with something that almost looked like regret. I called it off, he said. I thought I was helping her. I really did. But she got intense. And when I realized she was ready to blow up her life for something I wasn't offering, I pulled back. She didn't take it well. I wasn't surprised. Not by any of it. But hearing him say it confirmed what I had suspected all along. She had gambled everything on someone who was never holding any real cards. She's a grown woman, I said. She made her decisions. He looked like he wanted to say more. I'm not the one you need to talk to, I added, turning away. But before I left, he said one more thing. For what it's worth, you didn't deserve it. And maybe I didn't. But it didn't matter anymore. By the time I left that bar, something had fully settled inside me. A weight had lifted, because I finally saw the whole picture with no missing pieces. She had made her move. He had made his. That evening, I went home to the house I had quietly begun leasing 2 weeks earlier. A small place on the edge of town. Nothing fancy. Just space. Clean walls. A worn but comfortable sofa. Silence that didn't ache. I unpacked slowly. Placed a few books on the shelf. Hung up the old college photo of my dad and me fishing, something I hadn't displayed in years. Then I stood in the middle of that quiet room and breathed. Because I had finally stepped out of a relationship that had ended long before either of us had the courage to admit it. And still, something in me knew she hadn't finished reaching back. Because people like her don't grieve what they've lost. She had just realized she wasn't holding the strings anymore. The next morning, my phone lit up with another message from her. I drove by the house. Your car wasn't there. Did you move out? It was short, uncertain, like a woman trying to feel the walls in a room that had gone dark. I didn't answer. Hours passed. Then another text came. I think we should talk. Please. I'm sorry if I hurt you. There it was. She wasn't ready for silence that didn't beg for reconciliation. Still, I said nothing. By late evening, she called. This time I answered because I wanted her to hear the calm in my voice. The kind that comes after a storm clears, and you realize the wreckage isn't your responsibility anymore. I just wanted to know if you're okay, she said. I'm fine. A pause. Hesitation. I didn't expect this, she added. You just disappeared. I let that sit for a moment before answering. No, I said. I didn't disappear. I just stopped standing still. She didn't speak right away. Can we meet? She asked, quieter now. There's so much I want to explain. What exactly? I asked. That you had a plan and it didn't work out the way you hoped? That I was supposed to be here, waiting, while you figured out if he wanted to keep you. That's not fair. It's honest. She didn't argue that. I was confused, she finally said. I thought I needed something else. I thought he understood me better. But he didn't. And now you realize what you left behind, I continued. But not because you miss me. Because the person you wanted chose not to catch you. I made a mistake, she said softly. No, I replied. You made a decision. Over and over again. The mistake was thinking I'd still be here when it didn't work out. The line went quiet. I know I hurt you, she finally said. Yes, I replied. But not in the way you think. You didn't break me. You just exposed something I didn't want to see. That we stopped being a team long before you took off that ring. Her voice cracked slightly. I don't know what to do now. You don't have to do anything, I said. Because I already have. And with that, I hung up. The next few days were oddly peaceful. She didn't call again. I suspect she knew that door had truly shut. One afternoon, I received a message from Sarah. She told me she's taking time off work. It read, apparently she's not handling the fallout very well. I didn't reply, because I finally understood that her struggle wasn't mine to manage anymore. She would rebuild, or she wouldn't. Either way, I was done patching holes in a ship she'd already set on fire. That weekend, I sat on the back porch of my new place, watching the sun drop behind the trees. There was a quiet hum of insects, the distant bark of a neighbor's dog. It was nothing special, and yet it felt like everything I had been missing for years. For the first time in a long while, I felt whole. Because no one else was taking up space in my mind, demanding my energy, holding me in emotional limbo. Later that night, I opened a drawer and pulled out the ring she'd left on the table. I hadn't thrown it away. I hadn't sold it either. I just kept it, quietly, not out of sentiment, but as a reminder. A symbol not of love lost, but of lessons learned. I took it outside, walked down the path into the woods, and found a small stream. The water was shallow, barely moving. I stood there for a moment, feeling the weight of that ring in my palm. Then I let it fall. It hit the surface with a soft splash and vanished into the silt. Gone. Back at the house, I didn't think about her. I didn't wonder what she was doing. I didn't replay the past. I let the night wrap around me like a blanket I hadn't realized I needed. The kind you don't beg for. The kind you take when you finally remember who you were before someone else forgot.
Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments, and do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.